Hello, I'm Dr. Shaw. I'm going to be your professor this semester for one of two sections of the Religion 100 class. Section 6 will meet on Tuesdays and Thursdays from 12:15 to 1:30, and Section 8, which I will also be teaching, will be meeting from 10:50 to 12:05. So both sections are running back to back. They will both be, at this point, so far as we're aware, in room 253 of the Rhine Building. So if you're wondering where the Rhine Building is, I have sent you a map with a note on it alerting you to which building the Rhine Building is. It's building number 6 on your map. It also gives you where my office is, which is in the Russell House, directly across from Grace Chapel. So you also should have received and should be able to find on Canvas your syllabus. I'll say more about that in a minute. First of all, welcome to Lenoir-Rhyne University. I realize for many of you, you're just getting settled in. It's still very warm. We've had a lot of weather, especially rain. And I'm sure many folks are feeling a bit overwhelmed, especially getting into residence halls or making all the adjustments that are required for university life. Most everybody in our class are first-year students, and that includes both the students who are taking the class as a special class as a part of their studies, or perhaps in a high school experience, the early college experience, or the high school scholars program that Lenoir-Rhyne has. So welcome, get ready to settle down. I know there's a lot going on. It's part of our task at Lenoir-Rhyne to try to help you as instructors and as faculty members to help take some of that awkwardness away by helping to orient you a little bit. One of the ways you can help to minimize some of the stress of making all those adjustments is to try to stay ahead as possible on your assignments and on the tasks in preparing for class. So I've already sent you a syllabus. I've already sent you some preparatory material. If you have not filled out the questionnaire, please go ahead and complete it and email it back to me. That's really important. And that questionnaire, that 10-question questionnaire, is for my eyes only. It's not so that I can make any determinations other than the fact it helps me to get some sense of where you may be, whether you belong perhaps to a different religious group other than Christianity, or whether you consider yourself a person who is not religiously affiliated, or perhaps which denomination you might connect with or have connected with in the past. So that's really important for me, and again, that's for my information so that I can better be able to help you. It's not uncommon in this day and time to have students who are coming to university for the first time who are not religious at all, have no experience with the church, and therefore when taking a course like Religion 100, oftentimes it can feel a little daunting, especially using the kind of language that's involved in a course like this when talking about the Bible for the first time, and even the way in which chapters and verses are enumerated. We'll talk about that briefly, but if you have any questions, please don't hesitate to ask. But that information, that survey, will help give me some guidance as to where you might be and what help I can be to you. So, as you're coming to campus and dealing with all of those things that can feel very overwhelming, all the ID cards, all of the parking stickers and those kinds of things, I want to try to help minimize that feeling of being overwhelmed by helping to try to space some things out in this final week, final few days in fact, before we begin our class this coming Tuesday. So I've given you the times that our class sections meet. Let me say something with respect to our textbooks. First, there have been some questions about which text we will be using. The text that I have already mentioned to you is this text, Theology, the Basics, by Alistair McGrath. This is a text that may have appeared in the online information about the class prior to your actually having signed up for the class. But this will be a book that we will actually be using a lot of in our study together. In fact, we will thoroughly read it through. The other thing, and I've already received some questions about it, is the Common English Bible. This translation is a particular translation. Let me say this. Bible translations are translations from ancient language. Much of the Old Testament was written in Hebrew. Most, if not all, the New Testament, in fact, all the New Testament was written in Koine Greek. There is a section which even many Lutheran students are not familiar with, known as the Old Testament Apocrypha, and much of it was also written in Greek. So when we're dealing with a text such as this, we're dealing with a translation. All of us have perhaps favorite translations. I have, for myself, preferred the New Revised Standard for many things. But this particular translation is one that will hopefully be accessible to you. The Common English Bible translation is one not only that uses contemporary English, but it is also one that translates certain words in a particular way, and it will be helpful for us in our study. There is no such thing in dealing with text for a class like this as a perfect text. There's certainly things about Theology, the Basics by Alistair McGrath that I might prefer were a little bit different. As one of my teachers said years ago, the perfect textbook I haven't written yet. And the truth is that this is the case with Alistair McGrath's book. But I think for the most part it works and suits us very well for this particular class. Some of the teachers who teach this class, some of my colleagues, use a book known as the Apostles' Creed Today. I am not using that text, partly because I find that it's difficult in a class like this to have time to discuss all of the material that we have to discuss, and it's very difficult to add another text to it. So for that reason, I use just the two texts I've discussed, even though the text, the Apostles' Creed Today, is listed on the course catalog online. Let me also say something real quickly as far as the CEB translation. Please make sure to get a copy of it, because it's next to impossible when we're in class and looking at texts for you to be able to try to negotiate looking online. You need to be able to more easily have a print copy of it, and that will serve you quite well. Also, our bookstore, if you're not already aware of it, has a very generous buyback program. It will allow you to buy used books, and that can be a huge help to you when you're trying to save money, or you're trying to save money that your parents or some benefactor, or when you're on a scholarship and you're on limited funds. So certainly, if you want to buy a used copy at the bookstore of these two texts, feel free to do that. One of the things you've already discovered, hopefully, is Canvas. It is our online platform. It is one that works very well. If you ever have any difficulty with it, and you have any questions, which on occasion I do, There is, when you open the platform, a question mark that is down on the sidebar, on the left-hand side of the screen, and that will enable you to either text directly to technical support, or you can call the telephone number, which is puts you in touch with someone right here at Lenore University, and will enable you to be able to get your questions answered and get past your dilemma. So, coming to class, I want to make sure that you understand that we need to be prepared, that you come with the assignment having been completed. Every class period has pre-work involving, including our first session, which is why I've been sending so many emails to make sure you were clear that there was material that needed to be gone over, and there was an assignment. There were actually assignments that needed to be completed, including viewing this video. So please make sure that that you do your assignments in advance, and it will really pay off as you're trying to learn this material. And there's a lot of material to cover. There are already on the Canvas platform scanned pages for the preface, the author's preface. Too many of us, I don't think, take time sometimes when we are using books, whether it's a textbook or even just pleasure reading material, to take time to read the preface, much less the introduction. I want you to read the preface. I want you to become familiar with even the cover picture. It's a painting, and become aware of some of the things that are very interesting about the painting itself. It is a painting from the 16th century, and we'll have some discussion in our first class about it. So make sure you go ahead and do that assignment. The scanned pages will allow you, if you're still waiting on the book, and I understand that in a few of you have mentioned that the texts are now back-ordered. We have more students than ever before in the history of Lenore University on campus. So with so many students needing to take Religion 100 in their first semester as freshmen, as many of you are, it appears that we may be short on books. So I'll try to make sure you have the materials necessary, and as soon as you can, make sure to get to the bookstore and make sure to put your order in on books. So every class period before we meet, there will be an assignment, usually a reading assignment, and then there will be some questions for you to consider. What this does is it begins to allow you to begin to engage the material, not just read through it to get through it, but to begin to really think about the material, and that again will pay off when we get into class. If you have read the material, if you have engaged the material with questions I'm going to ask you, it will better prepare you when you come into class, and then we can actually raise questions and have questions thought out. So also part of your first assignment is to look over the syllabus. I'll say something about that in a minute. You will want to keep up with your assignments. It's very important that you do. If you get behind, it becomes that much more difficult. And I will monitor Canvas to make sure that you are completing the assignments. When you post on Canvas, do not email me the answers to the questions. Go ahead and post on Canvas. And what it will allow you to do is that once you have posted, you will be able to see other posts. And you can even engage some of your colleagues in class that way and see, oh, well, you saw something I didn't see. And I will monitor that as well and just make sure everybody is sort of tracking. But it's a great way of learning, especially in a class of 32 people, when we don't have a whole lot of time for everyone to be able to discuss. Everybody can participate online, and that will be 10% of your grade at the end of the course. So make sure you are fully engaged, that you're doing the assignments. That's part of your preparation work. Now, I said something a minute ago about the syllabus. Syllabus, many of you coming from high school experiences may not be familiar with a syllabus. Perhaps you are. But think of a syllabus as a contract. At Lenore University, and in fact in most colleges and universities, your teachers are required to provide you with a syllabus. And that contract enables you to know very clearly what is expected in the class. It allows me at the end of the semester to be able to say you have or have not completed the expectations of the class, and for us to have a very clear understanding. It also gives you the ability to be able to try to more clearly understand the schedule of what we're going to try to be following. We've got a lot of material to cover. So it will be very important to stay up with that, be aware of it, know what's going on. And so before you come on Tuesday, I want you to take a look at that syllabus online. I will have hard copies for you to actually give out on Tuesday, but I want you to go ahead and look over that syllabus and see if you have any questions, things that you're not clear on. I've tried to be as clear as possible. As I have taught this class over the last few years, there are things I learn every time I teach it. I've had to make adjustments in the schedule because in the past I've taught the class Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, and this semester it's a Tuesday, Thursday class. So the structure of the class is a little different, and I've had to make allowances for that, but we will still need to cover and will plan on covering the same amount of material. It's the same amount of, same number of hours anyway, but I've had to make some adjustments in it. So we will try as much as possible to follow the schedule, but as far as test days and quiz days, we're going to try to remain very much in line with that schedule, and that will give you a way to prepare. Now, coming from high school experience, again, different folks have different experiences, or if you're still in high school, this will also help to prepare you perhaps better for a university experience by being here at Lenore and taking this class. But it is extremely helpful. In fact, it's really just prudent for you to form study groups. If you live off campus, that will require a little bit of direction on your part, and that you connect with folks in class, and that you find a meeting place so that you can go over material well in advance of a quiz or a test. And by going over it, by allowing folks to take turns, it again will reinforce what we've done in class. So again, if you will do the preparatory material, if you will then come ready to work in class, if you will review your notes on your own, and the PowerPoints, which I will make every one of the PowerPoints available on Canvas, that's where they will be posted. And then if you work together as study groups, do those four things, and you will be well prepared for a quiz or test. And don't think, I don't know about you, but I've never been really successful at being able to take a text and materials, put it under my pillow, and receive the material through osmosis, through the pillow. It really doesn't work very well. And cramming, frankly, doesn't work very well. So again, stay with the material. I realize you have other college classes. That's why you're here. But if you will look ahead, and especially if you recognize that you have an activity, and I'll say something more about that in a minute, if you will try to look ahead and see what reading assignments and preparation work you will have, I'll try to make sure that you have everything up on Canvas in adequate time, so that if you want to go ahead and work ahead, go ahead, because not everybody has loads of time. In fact, most of us don't. I'm also a parish pastor, so I know very well I have to look ahead and be prepared to make sure that I make allowances. And if I need preparation time and I have it, go ahead and get it done. And that way, when crunch time comes and every paper in the world is due on the same night and the test is coming up tomorrow on the following day, it allows me to prioritize and stay with material without getting caught in that crunch. So as you are in this class and as you are engaged in a required class here at Lenore University, you will find it helpful to be able to develop good study habits now, and it will serve you well throughout your collegiate career. If you're involved in an activity, and we want you to be involved in activities, whether it's engaged in Rush with a fraternity or sorority, or if you're an athlete, a student athlete, or if you're involved in perhaps marching band, which is a wonderful thing that Lenore University has and has reestablished in the last few years, or you're involved in some other activities that are sanctioned, in music activities, or perhaps in clubs or organizations. And again, we want you to be involved in those things. Make sure that you look ahead, look at your schedule, know, for instance, if you have a football game coming up or you have marching band coming up on a weekend, that you look far enough ahead to say, we're going to have an away game. I need to make adjustments in that. Or if you're involved in other sporting activities, such as the swim team, please make sure to look ahead and try to make sure that you make me aware. I don't know your schedules. You do. Make sure you have your schedule with you and that you're looking ahead. And if you know that you're going to be absent for a quiz, let me know as far in advance so that I can make provision for that, or for a test. And while we're on the matter of tests, go ahead now and look at the syllabus. Notice what the date is for the final exam. Every year I have someone who comes forward and says, well, Mom booked tickets for Disney World on that date. Well, Lenore University has a schedule. It's published well in advance. So please go ahead and look and see what the dates are and make sure that those who are at home are aware that you have to be here for these exams. No exceptions. Now, there is at least one exception that I am able to work with. Sometimes, in fact, it's not uncommon with international students or students who live at a great distance to have to book flights before the end of the semester. So if you're trying to do that as you are making those plans, make sure you consult with me. But we try, under very rare circumstances, to not have to reschedule a final exam. That's very important that we try to maintain that schedule. Same thing with tests and quizzes, although there's a little more flexibility. You will have tests. They are weighted differently than quizzes. Quizzes only count 1%, but they are really a chance for you to get a sense of kind of where you are. There are 5 quizzes. There will be 3 tests and 1 final exam. Each of the tests is worth 10% of your final grade, each one. And then your final exam, which is fully cumulative in this class, is weighted at 20% of your final grade. There's also a portion of your grade which you will see in the syllabus, which is the overall class participation, and that's based upon your postings, your participation in class. You also need to look at the attendance policy. University policy regarding attendance in class is very clear. You cannot pass this class if you are absent for more than 25% of this class. So go ahead now and make plans rather than deciding that Thursday is time to take early, an extended weekend. There's ample time built in for holidays, so make sure that that you're following that. You want to identify quickly as much as you can in your collegiate career, and this class is no exception. Colleagues in class, folks in your dormitory, folks that you can work with. Not everybody is your best study partner. Be aware of the fact that sometimes our best friends or people that we're on a team together with may or may not be our best study partners. Sometimes we need somebody that can be our study partner that we may not know well, but we know has good study habits to help encourage us. So make sure you do that. Don't just go finding somebody who's your best friend and think that that may be your best study partner. I realize that as we're coming into class, especially on Tuesdays and Thursdays, there are a lot of activities going on. You may well be coming from classes from the other side of class, but we really want to stick to starting times. We want to start on time, in other words. So on Tuesdays and Thursdays, if you have the Section 8, we are going to start at 10:50. I'll close the door and we will begin class. If you come in late, you may have already missed something critical. I'm also, and then if you are in the Tuesday, Thursday Section 6 that meets from 12:15 to 1:30, we will start at 12:15. There will be quizzes, as I said, and on quiz days, by the way I have structured these two sections this semester, we will take the quiz, which should take you less than an hour to take a quiz. I'll give you plenty of time. I'm not going to rush anybody, but if you need the full hour, you can have it. Then we will use the remainder of our time together, the remaining 25 minutes to go ahead and go over new lecture material, and that way we can stay where we need to be in the class. So make sure you're on time. I will give you a few minutes, especially if you're coming from the other side of campus, for tests and quizzes to take just a moment to go to the facilities. Make sure you're ready. Go over a few things. If you need to, take a few minutes and do that. When a test or a quiz is given out, the entire desk will be cleared. Everything will be out of sight. No cell phones anywhere near you. They will be completely covered. I will place quizzes and tests face down on the desk, and only when I tell you will you turn it over. Once we start a test or a quiz, if you have to leave, unless I have a specific need that comes with an exemption, a letter from Sherry Proctor, I will not release you to go outside the room. If you go outside the room, again, with the exception of anybody who has a particular exemption, then the test or the quiz is over. You cannot come back in. I know that sounds being rather difficult, but it is one way in which we have of making sure that everybody is being honest. And I've had to implement that policy because in the past, unfortunately, I had someone who abused the privilege and unfortunately was using the opportunity to go to the restroom, and I became aware of the fact when I got a quiz back that they had looked at notes in the bathroom. So I don't need to go any further with that. I want to be able to trust you, but I have to put policies in place that make sure that the quizzes and tests are treated with integrity. As to the matter of integrity, I do not tolerate cheating, and I unfortunately have had it happen in the past in violation of the Honor Code. I do not tolerate those who cheat, and nor should you as one of your classmates. So if I suspect it, if I become aware of it, I will pursue it, and if I have reason to believe that it is and that there is evidence to support it, I will file the necessary paperwork. There will be one of your tests. It will be in November. I will be at a conference. You will see it in the syllabus. It is what is known as a take-home test. Now, take-home test, if you've ever done one, it does not mean that the questions are quite as easy as one that you have to know the material verbatim. A take-home test will allow you the opportunity to use open book and open note. Notice those two things. Not, I want to emphasize, not open neighbor, not an opportunity to go surf the internet. I have had a student before who violated that policy and therefore violated the Honor Code and ended up flunking the test because they could not follow the policy. So again, when that comes, make sure that you are following the rules, and I will again go over exactly how that test is to be handled at the appropriate time. So when you come to class, get settled, whether it's test day or quiz day or whether it's class day. Make sure that you come, that you get settled, that you get ready to work. Put the cell phones away. I do not permit you to text in class. I realize all of us have cell phones. I need one because I need to be in touch, because if there's a pastoral emergency, I need to be able to know about it. It will remain in vibration mode so that it does not become a distraction. I'm going to ask you to do the same thing. Do not be sitting behind a book or sitting behind your desk and texting. You cannot pay attention and at the same time text. Now, electronics policy. I've already made it clear, I think, about cell phones. Cell phones, the screens are simply too small for you to be able to adequately do work or to look at class notes or take notes. On the other hand, a tablet or a laptop I do permit in class. Different teachers at Lenoir-Rhyne University, you will find, have different policies regarding electronics. I do permit it. Not every teacher will. But if I discover that what is on your laptop at any given moment is something else other than notes or looking at something that is relevant to the class, I will ban you from having a tablet or a laptop computer in the class. So fair warning, do not violate the policy, and then I will not have to have that conference with you afterwards. There's a reason under North Carolina law that for drivers, you are not to be texting and driving. Rule simply is, you cannot concentrate on two things at one time. We may think we are able to do that, but the reality is not. So don't be playing video games on your laptop or iPad. We are on the honor policy. Make sure that you are aware that your colleagues are watching. They're not intending to rat you out, but all of us are to hold to the honor policy. That means we will not cheat, nor will we tolerate others who do. If you're able to do it, come early. Be just a few minutes early. I'm going to certainly try to be early, and especially if you have the Section 6 that meets at 12:15, I will already be in the classroom. So make sure, please, that you are alert, that you're there, that you're engaged. Bring your text to class, the Common English Bible text, and your material. It may be helpful to print things out to go back and look at so that you can take notes on those. That will be fine. When we talk about the Bible, this is not my Bible or somebody else's Bible. This, properly understood, is the church's Bible. It is a particular English translation, as I already said. The texts, the ancient texts in the Old Testament predominantly were Hebrew. The New Testament was Koine Greek, and the Old Testament Apocrypha, the majority of it was in Greek. We'll talk more about that. So it's proper to speak of the church's Bible. It is the church's Bible that has, over the centuries, informed the church's doctrine, that is to say teaching, and also has served as the primary source of the church's theology. The text, Theology, the Basics, is a text by Alistair McGrath, and one of the things I've already asked you to do as part of your first assignment is to find out a little something about our author. And I think it will be helpful to you to have some of that background knowledge, and then I think you can better appreciate some of the direction in which he's coming. Now, by the title, Theology, the Basics, we're already using a word that for many of you may be not a very familiar word. The word theology is a little awkward for many. In fact, many folks have no idea what theology is. So that's one of the first things we're going to begin to discuss, is what theology really is. This may be helpful. A story of something that happened to me a few years ago. And I will say that for many folks, it's very difficult for them to imagine what theology is, much less what a theologian does. But even though I know virtually nothing about physics, I have at least some vague idea of what a physicist does. But some years ago, when I was studying in my PhD program in Toronto, Canada, I would travel in from the suburbs early in the morning by train, come to Union Station in the southern part of the city of Toronto, cross over, and would routinely take the TTC, or the subway lines that run under much of Toronto's downtown streets. But before I would do that, I would often go down to the mall area, which was all indoors, and as the Canadians would say, have a coffee. And as I was sitting having a coffee one morning before I got on the TTC, the subway, I happened to look over and I saw a face that I recognized from television. It was Mike Holmes. Now, some of you may or may not be familiar with who Mike Holmes is. If you happen to, some years ago, have watched with a parent or somebody in your household the Home and Garden Network, you may have actually seen Mike Holmes. He had a show called Homes on Homes. He is a very intelligent man. He is one who knows a lot about building codes, but he's also Canadian. And his show was filmed in Canada, and part of his show involved him going and helping people whose homes needed desperately to be brought up to code, or to assist them with home repair. Hence the show Homes on Homes. And as I looked over one morning and realized that in Toronto's Union Station, as I was having a coffee, I suddenly realized Mike Holmes was there, and it appeared he was talking with what presumably was his agent. And I had the sense I needed to at least go over and speak, but I was a little hesitant because, well, he is a TV personality, and I thought he has other things to do other than talk to me. But I decided that rather than sit and just stare and watch what was going on, I would go over and introduce myself and speak, and told him how much I enjoyed his programming. And when I spoke, it became obvious to him, to one who was a native of Ontario, Canada, that I wasn't from Ontario. He made the comment, he said, that's not an Ontario accent. And I said, well, it's a sort of, I said, well, it's a Southern Ontario accent. He said, no, that's not an Ontario accent. So where are you from? And I told him I was a native of North Carolina. And he asked, the next question was, well, what brings you to Toronto? And I said, well, I'm living here because I'm in a PhD program at the University of Toronto, and specifically University of St. Michael's College. So then follows the next question. So what are you studying? And I said, well, I'm a PhD student in systematic theology. And then I could see the look come over his face, which was having no idea what that even was. And he said, after pausing for a minute, and he said, well, I guess someone has to study hydraulics and water pressure. And his agent turned to him and she said to him, Mike, theology, that's religion. And he said, damn! We got a big chuckle out of it. The reality is there are a lot of folks who are very, very bright people like Mike Holmes, who are not people who are that familiar with the word theology. We're going to talk a little bit about what it means. And in fact, there are different types of theology. There are different studies in the field of theology. For one, I am a systematic theologian. That's my particular branch. But there's such areas as sacramental theology, biblical theology, which is the study of the scriptures. There are things like eschatology and soteriology. We're going to talk about some of those terms and what they mean in the realm of theology. And in the medieval world, theology itself was considered a science. We're going to talk about why it was considered a science and what really the term science actually means as it relates to theology, because in the medieval world it was a science. We'll talk more about that and the way in which theology in many ways shaped Western Europe and the early United States, and how Christianity shaped the Western civilization. The task in this course is not to attempt to make you believe. Learning what various doctrines are or teachings is not the same as saying you have to believe it. You'll see something about what's known as proselytizing in your syllabus. You may want to look at it so you understand at least what the intent of this class is. It is a class to help you to appreciate the rich field of theology and also the church's Bible, to know something about it and the way in which it's shaped our civilization, not only in the past, but also in the present. Many of the folks who work at Lenore University, who are on the faculty, who are on the staff, are not even Christian. There are many who are, but there are also those who are non-believers, those who would consider themselves atheists or agnostics. Perhaps some of you are in that situation. And then there are those who are of other religious faiths, Islam or Sikhism or Hinduism and Buddhism. It is not our task here to try to suggest to you that Christian theology is the right kind of theology, or that the church's Bible is something that you have to accept as the norm for your life. However, we're going to be looking at the ways in which it has shaped our society, and for many of you who come from fields such as nursing or in science, the physical sciences, such as physics or chemistry or biology, for those of you who are in business or any variety of fields or music, theology and the church's Bible have had a tremendous impact upon our society, and it will help you to appreciate. It's part of what being a liberal arts university is about. Our task here as teachers is to assist you in thinking, and we want you to be able to think and do critical thinking. We're going to stretch you. We're going to help you to begin to think perhaps in some ways that you may not have thought about before. And quite candidly, there may be some things that may be a bit of a challenge to you. It does not mean you have to accept it, but we are asking you as teachers to consider some possibilities, some things you may have never thought about before, and some ways of seeing things. So we will take a particular approach. While Lenore Ryan University is still, and has been since its founding, Lutheran, specifically a university of the Evangelical Lutheran Church in America under the auspices of the North Carolina Synod, it may be that it will give you an opportunity to see how the church is involved in one particular area of your life, even if you're not one who considers yourself religious or even Christian. So we'll talk about the church's Bible. We will talk about theology. We will talk about things that you may have never encountered. And all of this is part of why it is that you need to read the material in advance, come having already answered some questions to help you think about it, and then be prepared to receive and reflect upon the material. I'm not going to quiz you or test you on material that we have not had some conversation about. So do not fear that I'm going to throw material at you that you've not at least had some consideration before. We will thoroughly work through McGrath, as I have said. There will be opportunities during this class for you to be able to earn extra credit. Please do not be upset when we sit down and discuss your papers, and we will do that. You will submit a rough draft of each of the two papers. So when you submit that, and we will have time for us to sit down and look at your written copy, or I should say your printed out copy that you have composed in a word processor. The first essay will be 600 words. The second will be 1,200 words. There's more in the syllabus on what those papers entail. But when we sit down, I want to be able to make sure that the paper is constructed well, but come with the reality that on those papers we start with a good paper, a well-written paper that I've looked at, and you present the final copy, which you will upload to Canvas. You will not hand it in to me. You will upload it to Canvas for particular reasons that I'll explain on Tuesday. And when we do that, I will make sure that it is focused, that it is on the material that we need to be looking at, that we have discussed in class. I'm not going to ask you to write testimonials. I'm not going to ask you to write about material that you may have learned in other places. Instead, it will be something that will be focused on what we have discussed in class, the 600-word and the 1,200-word essay. And when you bring that to me, you can expect to receive for a well-written paper an A-. So how do I earn an A on a paper? There are opportunities for extra credit. I'll talk about those. There are lectures during the semester, and by going to one of those lectures or attending an opportunity for a film that I'll say something more about Tuesday, you have an opportunity for an A. So what if I want an A plus? Well, if you look at the college catalog, in fact, if you look at the grading scale, you'll discover that on a 4.0 scale, an A is a 4.0. There is no such thing at Lenore University as an A plus, at least on the final grade. So we start off with a well-written paper that is an A minus. We have an opportunity to bring it to an A, and a solid A on a 600-word essay or a 1,200-word essay will serve you extremely well going in for your final grade. I want you to look over the syllabus. I want you to mark it with any questions that you may have, write down any questions you may have, and then you'll receive a written copy. I want you to make sure that there is respect to two matters. First of all, if I review the rough draft of your paper before your final paper, and that will be the case with everybody, everybody coming to university does not come as an eloquent speaker or as a superb writer. And so I want to give you the opportunity to do well on these papers. And the way that I can do that is that everyone will sign up in advance a time with me, 10 minutes for the 600-word essay. For the 1,200-word essay, it will be for 15-minute time slots. And I will meet with you, have a chance to read your printed copy. Do not bring me a computer. Bring me a printed copy. I will mark it up, give you an opportunity to then go back and make the edits, and that's an A- paper, and then you have the opportunity by attending a discussion in the evening or a film to be able to bring that to an A. If in the course of reading over your paper I become aware of the fact that you may need some extra help, I'm not going to write your paper for you. Please do not be insulted if I ask you to go to the Writing Center. The Writing Center is available on our university campus to aid students, not in writing their papers, but in helping them to develop some skills that will serve you not only in this class, but in other classes as well. So if I ask you to do that, I will give you extra credit if you will bring me the slip that says you have been to the Writing Center, and that way you can have a well-prepared paper. If you have an accommodation, please make sure that I'm aware of it. If you have questions about accommodation, the testing center with Sherry Proctor is the avenue, and that is the only way in which I can receive that letter in order of accommodation, in order to take that into consideration. Now, I'm here. I am available. If during the course of this semester I begin to feel like that you may benefit from the aid of a tutor, we have student tutors who can help you with helping to grasp the material. I'll do everything I can, and I'll certainly be available to you, but sometimes there are those students, and there's no shame at all in being able to recognize you may need a little extra help. Not all of us are born with the ability to be able to retain things, but there is certainly help available, and we want to make every effort to help make your collegiate career successful for you. My office, as are the faculty offices for all of the Department of Religion, they are in the Russell House. So you can see me by appointment. I can also be available by appointment after the 1:30 time slot at the conclusion of the Section 6 class. There is no fault in being able to admit one needs a little bit of extra guidance and attention. so that we can help you meet your collegiate goals. We want to make sure you follow the honor code. Again, that you are punctual and that you are prepared for your quizzes, for your tests, for your writing assignments, and to make sure that your take-home exam is followed so that it is something that is equitable for everyone in the class. Again, I don't need to say it again, teaching will not be tolerated. In the medieval world, as I've already said, theology was considered a science. In fact, it was regarded as the queen of sciences. We'll talk a little bit more about that. Prepare to come to class and recognize that it may be something that you will actually enjoy. It's something that will help to offer you some perspective on our world. But for many of us coming out of the high school experience, things will feel a bit different at Lenore or any college experience than they did in high school. Study requirements will be different. Expectations will be different. And you will find that we will not test for the test, as perhaps was your experience in high school. Instead, in this class at least, all the material that we will discuss from the first day to the very last day will be cumulative. And warning to the wise, as you will see in the syllabus, do not think, oh, I'm done for the class, this last class won't matter. Trust me when I say this. The last class matters as much as the first class does. So come, make sure you're there in class. If you have to miss, sometimes there are reasons, but try, if at all possible, to strive toward perfect attendance. Make sure that while you're engaging in correspondence, that you're using Canvas, and please also use campus email. There is an exception to that. Sometimes there are situations where you need to notify me that something legitimate has come up. I do not mean something has come up and then you don't give me an explanation. If you have an appointment with me, I expect you to be there. There are circumstances, however, that do happen. If you have to go, if you are sick, you need to go to the doctor, go to the infirmary. I need a note. I cannot accept I was sick and then you not bring a note. So I simply, in order for all of us to be accountable, need to make sure that you are accountable to the university. If there's a problem that comes up, a family matter or health concern, a major health crisis, make sure that you discuss with Dean Katie. That is one option for you if you find yourself in trouble. And if I believe honestly that you're going to have difficulty with this class, I will make sure that you are notified in private before the deadline for withdrawal. I want to make sure that you do not create a problem for yourself in your GPA. And I trust that if I do recommend that perhaps it's best for you to drop, that you will take that advice seriously. Certainly discuss it with your advisor, but I can pretty well guarantee that if I can look at your grades and feel that you have little or no chance of passing the class, I will let you know that, and I think your advisor will take it seriously. So come prepared, come on time, and I will see you Tuesday on the 21st. Thank you.